All right. So this is Jeremy Schreifels with Monumental Media, and I am Doug Poirier, your host here at Thundercast. And we are talking about personal growth, business, and financial freedom. And Jeremy is going to tell us a little bit about his journey today and forming his company and how he serves people and makes people money and happy and create growth.
Wow.
So,
That's
so
impactful, Doug. I love that.
I don't know. I'm just winging it today. Jeremy, so tell us a little bit about you. Tell me why you decided to found Monumental Media.
You know, I th I think that the why is really built in the story and which I think is a powerful one and a journey that many of us as entrepreneurs and business owners take. And that story is, starting out from the nothing and starting from an idea and building on that. I came up with the idea of jack stacking last week, just as an idea of like where people get stuck on this jack of all trades and doing many things, but remembering like you're just layering all these skills that you need to get to that point. And so, starting back at kind of a beginning of a story, I spent about 20 years being a freelance drummer. So, touring the US as a drummer with different country rock, um, big bands, those kinds of things, being in the music business as a performer and server of music, so to speak. And along that way, picked up a lot of skills in terms of like networking and how do you grow a business and how do you interact with people of all sorts of different types in all parts of the country? Because as you know, Doug, with as much travel as you do as well, like every part of the country is just a little bit different. And so I took those skills and the skills of performance, but then also the teaching background that I had from teaching high school students for almost 20 years as a overlap to that performance career and wanted to help and encourage other business owners and entrepreneurs. And I had no idea that that's already what I was doing, but I just thought I was being a drummer in a band serving other people. As I kind of grew and thought about that process and connected with some great coaches and mentors, which is always highly recommended, they started to tell me like, Jeremy, you are building a network. Like you have all of these people that you've built an inner circle around you, and you've built a tribe around you, and people that know, like, and trust you. And then you're just marketing by being out and aware and available all of the time. And one of those things that I started doing a couple years ago after I released my book, Road to 99, was I started getting on podcasts. I started doing interviews literally just like this. And how that comes into play is the fact that the person that was editing a podcast interview was my now business partner, Danny. And he's like, he heard me in an interview of his client at the time and said, we need to talk, because I had come to his space at kind of this right time of him getting inundated with a lot of clients and him getting like having these misses. Like, I don't have the strengths in certain areas and like I need help because I'm growing fast, but like I don't have all of these skills. And he reached out to me. And in my mind, I thought at first it was just like a, hey, Jeremy, I see what you're doing. I think you're doing a great job. I hear you're doing music and all this creation stuff, and you work in a studio. So you have this audio engineering experience and all of that. He goes, I had thought originally the conversation was more of a, here's another stream of income that you could bring into your business, like into my business as an audio producer. And I said, okay, cool. So we met, and actually the conversation turned completely the other way, because we're like, he's like, why don't we just partner on this? Why don't we work together? Because he brought like 40 years of radio experience and audiobook narration and producing. And I brought all of this performance and audio and studio and business building and back end systems. Like we just kind of found that we filled in all of these gaps for each other in a business inside of a business. And so thus was built Monumental Voice Media. And so now serving clients to activate their voice, bring their brand, whether it be personal brand or their business brand, to life through podcasts, through audiobooks, voiceover work, corporate narration, things of that nature. Because so many people are spending time listening to podcasts like this awesome Thundercast podcast,
Thank you.
and audiobooks. So many people now are listening to audiobooks more because they're on the go, they're on the travel. They can do it while they're working out, and it's opening a
I
new.
have so many questions about stuff like that. Like if I'm
Yeah.
if I'm if I don't mean to interrupt you, I'm just thinking that what you do is so critical for business owners now, because even as I grow my own company, and I'm an IT guy, the whole idea of writing a book and doing podcasts and doing this stuff, it's a different lane. It's like, for to ask me as an IT guy, how do you do this, it's like asking a podiatrist to do open heart surgery. And I think that most people need to know, business owners, if you want to scale, if you want to grow, you have to learn to do this. And it's not easy, and it's tedious, it's time consuming, and you have to be able to put the time in over months. And you have to learn how to articulate and ask the right questions. And so, when I came across you, you were a gold mine. You were an absolute gold mine. And so, like, talk to me about that. Like, what are the questions that your clients come to you with, and how do you solve them? And also, feel free to drop your name. We'll put all your information on the podcast if anyone wants to reach out to you. But
Right.
explain to the audience, like, these are the challenges, and this is how if you want to grow and scale in this age, especially on the web, you have to do these things.
Yeah, I would say the number one challenge is just getting over the fact that people think that people don't want to hear from them. Like that they think that they don't have a voice, or they don't think that they have something to say. And then my immediate response is, well, you have a business, right? And you sell things, right? And you solve problems for people, correct? That, well, yes, of course we do. And I'm like, well, do you want to keep your doors open? Well, yes, of course we do, because we like to solve problems for people and serve them. I'm like, okay, great. Then tell them how you're doing it so you can bring more of them inside your doors. Because that's the number one thing that a podcast is doing. It's creating an immediate know, like, and trust factor for your clients. It's creating brand awareness and brand authority, and authority in whatever your niche may be, because you're talking about it all the time, and you're telling them, you're keeping them up to date on what's going on in that space, or what's going on in that world. And it gives them an opportunity to immediately know and like you without you running ads, without you having to do anything like that, other than just be you on a podcast. I was talking to a client yesterday, and I just said, who are the top 20 people you want to work with? Like, who are your top 20 ideal clients? And she's like, well, I just made that list. I said, fantastic. Call them all and say, do you want to be a guest on my podcast?
That's huge. That's a huge nugget right there. Oh my
That's a
goodness.
It's a gold mine, because you're immediately giving them something, but not asking for anything in return other than, come on my podcast, tell my audience about your business, and let's have a conversation. And in that interaction, you're going to gain a new relationship that is going to help you stack and lead into new clients. Even if that person is not the client, they might know 5 other people that you didn't even know about yet, that they're like, here's 5 clients. Because that happened to us 2 weeks ago. We brought in
Wow.
a new client, and we just said, hey, this is what we're doing, and this is what we're about, and this is how our process. She goes, I love this process. We have 5 referrals from that one person yet already.
Wow. That's mind blowing. Like, and I know, like, for me, like, certain industries we struggle to get new clients because it's a trust based thing, right? And so almost all of my clients are referral based. Almost all of them. I think I have one right now that found me just in a weird way. And so, this is so valuable because it allows me to get out there and establish brand and trust and relationship and knowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Expertise. While you were saying that, like, if someone's listening to this podcast right now and they're like, geez, where do I start? Should they write a book? Should they do a podcast? Where should they start?
Boy, that's a really great question. Some people are afraid to write a book. Less than 2% of the population will actually say they want to write a book, complete the book, and actually publish it. A higher rate of success happens if someone says, I want to do a podcast and start and begin it. Um, it's a, I think that they both have their pros and cons. I think if you are an established business and you feel confident, writing a book is a fantastic idea because it's the best business card you have. People say, well, can I get your business card or something? I'm like, how about I give you my book? Oh, you wrote a book? Like you just
Yeah.
opened again another whole conversation. Oh, let me just send you a free copy of my audiobook. You can just listen to it on the plane ride home. Take you a couple hours. Most people would be like, oh, okay. And we always suggest our authors read the book because no one tells their story like you tell your story. And then they're going to listen to you for a couple of hours and then they're going to have your voice in their head and know that you have a command of what you're talking about. The same thing happens in a podcast, but it's happening in short bursts of time. Um, so where to start? That's a really great question. It really depends on the person, I guess. I'd say a lower cost of entry in terms of investment is probably a podcast.
So let's talk about that because, I've been talking to you about my podcast for 6 weeks, right?
Yeah.
And it took me this long to get started. And it's, yeah, I'm busy. I'm really busy.
Mhm.
But it's not that I'm too busy to do the podcast. It's just that, like, I work so much, and I know a lot of people are going to suffer from the same thing. And if any of this helps someone get over the hump, it was just hard getting my brain wrapped around. I need this software. I need to do this. I need to edit this, and then I need to put it up here. And how many social media sites? And it got overwhelming. I
Right.
just finally I hired someone, you know, full time to manage this stuff for me. Like, I'm doing it, but I just handed it over. And not everyone can do that.
Right.
So what would you say to people, if they want to do a podcast? Would you say, look, just get on YouTube, get on Facebook, flip it open, get Zoom, hit record and go, and just publish it? It doesn't have to be perfect, right?
Right. It's just that it's the idea of beginning. We have a great ebook resource that's literally how to launch your podcast in just a few days. It has all of the things to make it very simple and easy for you to just get going. Because the number one thing about podcast is consistency and frequency. And by that, I just mean if you're going to choose to do a podcast on a weekly basis, which is what I would recommend for starting. Some people like, I want to do a daily podcast. I don't recommend that.
That's
It's a
daunting.
lot of work. It's a lot of work. So I say just do one a week and commit to that. And then get 4 or 5 in the hopper and then drop them. And then now you have something to build upon. Because what you just want to do is set up that consistency. Again, you're telling your audience and your ideal clients, I'm consistent, I can do the work, and they can see the growth. People want to see that authenticity when they talk about social media posting and what do I post and content. Doug, you and I are in a number of groups that we're always talking about, what do I even post? We got to have all this content. We know we have to do these things, but what do I post? Well, people just want to know who you are and what you're doing and being authentic inside of it.
And sometimes people are just curious or nosy. Oh, he
Exactly.
had
And
he
that's
had
cool
chicken
too.
today.
Yeah, exactly. I think my favorite thing is when I'm talking to people sometimes, like especially when as in regards to the social media space, is like, hey, I just saw you were in Florida. Now this might be like 6 months from now. Well, we know that I was just in Florida just a few days ago. However, 6 months from now, someone's going to be like, wow, you were just in Florida and you did all these things. I'm like, yeah. So they're watching and they're paying attention. The same thing happens on your podcast. People are listening. We had a client come back to us who they took a small break because they're just like, it wasn't a priority. They weren't making the time for it.
Right.
They weren't thinking there was value in it for their audience. This client came back to us after 60 days and said, I had 10 people reach out to me going, where's your podcast interviews? Where are your episodes? We haven't seen any new ones in 30 days.
Right.
So they were listening, they were watching, they were paying attention. And when you dropped off, they noticed.
And isn't that exactly what sales is about? You want them thinking about you, because if they're thinking about you, they're more likely to use you, right? So you just have to become an infection in their brain, just thinking about what it is you do and how that might help them.
Right. And it's that top of mind awareness, right? We want to keep
Right.
on the top of their mind, at least in some capacity, even if it was just like, hey, I know Doug is just a great guy to hang out with. I don't remember everything he does or all the pieces of what he does or the technical side of what he does, but I know like if I have a tech question, I know that I can just call him and he'll have either the answer or know where to direct me to get the answer. And to me, that's good enough.
Right. So, all right, let me ask you this. So, someone's listening. They're like, I want to do a podcast. Okay, now I'm just going to start. I'm going to just do one thing on YouTube once a week. How do
Mm-hmm.
people grow their audience? How do you do that?
You have to share it. You have to tell people about it. And I think that some people are like, well, I want to monetize it, or I want to grow it, or what's my ROI on my podcast? The ROI on the podcast is the investment in the podcast, and that means investing in yourself, putting in the time, being consistent, constantly growing, and constantly telling people about it. Um, in the music industry, like when every time somebody releases a song, or like when I have a client that's going to release a new album or something, they're like, how often should I tell people and how much ramp up should I do? And the mark you want to hit is by the time an album or a song launches, people should be saying, I thought that was already out because I can't see anything but that. Right.
Right.
So you've given them so many opportunities to see it. We know we have to hit somebody 7 to 10 times before they even realize that it was yours. And then another 7 to 10 times to realize, oh, I kind of like this. And then probably another 7 to 10 times where now they're actually invested in it. So that's almost 30 touches on one thing to get them to the point where they're like, oh, I want to see that stuff all the time.
So, when someone hires you and you help someone do this process, like what type of growth in the audience can they see using your techniques? I'm not asking you to give everything away today, but I just look at mine, right? I'm just starting out my
Right.
podcast, right? So I know I'm on track, right? Should I get like 10 views? So we did one the other day and we got 10 views almost immediately. And that was just on YouTube, and we didn't publish it anywhere. I was there, but we didn't advertise it anywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
the algorithms just found it. How big should someone be at the end of a month, in 2 months, 6 months, in a year in terms of audience size? What can they expect for the average person?
That's a great question. I wish I had a quantifiable number.
Yeah, it's
To,
nebulous,
to
right?
give, it's like it's different for everyone. Like if how big is your current social media audience? How much views and traction is the algorithm giving you on a regular basis? Are you
Right.
someone that gets 500 likes on a post that you make, or are you somebody that gets 20
And,
likes on a
yeah.
post? Okay. So let's just go with that kind of mindset, right? So if I get 500 versus 20, okay, well, there's probably a good chance that this person at 500 is going to get more opportunities to um, have more views on a regular basis versus this one. And then you just got to continue to keep growing those. Um, we do track kind of the monthly stats. Um, just to give feedback and say where can we grow, or where can we adjust, or how can we post new things. um but we had a client literally just she launched her podcast in the last 45 days, so she's about 8 episodes in, right? Dropped a few, we have a few in her first month. um she was at one, she hit this many downloads, let's just call it 200 downloads. Well, already for this month, she's already surpassed that many downloads. And so what you want with the podcast, I tell people to look at it as a 12-month picture. Give yourself 12 months to really see that, because month over month, it's really hard to see. I feel like the smallest number you could look at would be a quarter, like quarter over quarter, because you might change something and it takes a bit for that reaction to happen. It doesn't happen immediately. And so giving yourself time, if you're going to change something, you might see a small dip or a small raise. Um, and what happens is, as you gain new listeners, they're going to go back and listen to those older episodes.
Right.
And so you're constantly kind of creating a little bit of a snowball effect, but I would say more like a wave effect. So it's going to kind of go in cycles. And as you grow, obviously we just want that graph to go up.
Right. I was just thinking, for everything you're saying, and this is why I asked the question. I think that, as a small business owner, we have to manage our expectations, but we're also result driven, right? So we want to see, well, let's at least get one more like this week than we got last week, or 10
Yeah.
more like, or 10 more views than we got on the last podcast. So I just, for me, and I'm sure other people have these questions as well. I want to manage my expectations. Like, I don't want to get discouraged because, I only had 100 views last week. Well, if it was 99 more than last week, that might be fantastic, right?
Right.
So as I venture forth into this myself, I'm trying to think of the questions that other people may ask. Let's talk about the book and voiceovers that you do. I'm very interested. I am writing a book, and I'm 35,000 words into one for cybersecurity. And, I want to publish it, and I can do that myself. I actually know how I've done that. But what is your process? Like, someone comes to you and says, hey, I've never done this. I need to write a book. How do I write a book? Should I hire someone to write a book? And what's the voiceover? What's the expense? And, you talked about some of the benefits, but maybe you could go a little deeper into that.
Sure. If someone comes to us and say we want to write a book, we have a couple of editing partners that we like to work with, because we don't do the print side of things. We handle
Okay.
it once it's hit the manuscript, like let's call it final manuscripts phase, and then we take it over to do the audio portion. Um, but in terms of like on the front end of that in the publishing space, um, having done a book with an editor and a publisher, I highly recommend it. Only mostly from the editing and formatting side, just to make sure that that is tight and right and looks good, because lots of people self-publish, and sometimes, um, not all of the boxes get checked in terms of a quality check. And once it gets to, if you're going to go kind of the KDP, which is the Amazon publishing space, which is great because it's direct to print, which is really nice for authors.
It's real easy.
Uh, what's that?
It's real easy, right?
Yeah, it's super
Once you get
easy.
it up there, yeah, you just print, you have 5, 10, 20 books sent to you and hand them out.
Yeah, exactly. And it's easier for people to order because they're handling all of that print and ship and distribution, which is, great for the author. Um, and then again, launching that book well and doing a smart book launch and marketing piece with that. And again, that's something like we have partners that we partner with to suggest for people to make sure that they can be as successful on the edit, and then the launch, and then partnering with them once we get to the audio space. Whether I always suggest you try to do the release simultaneously. Some people will say bring the print out first, and then like 90 to 120 days later release the audiobook, so you kind of get a new resurgence. But what I'm hearing from authors is everybody whose book comes out, everybody's immediately asking for, when's the audio coming? I want to hear it on Audible. I want to listen to your book, because
Right.
not as many people are buying physical print books anymore.
You just got time, you're gonna carry it around, you can lose it. And it's just so much easier to lay back on a plane and put the earbuds in, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
when someone writes a book for business, like how many words are we talking generally? I mean, whenever I think of a book, I'm always thinking between 80 and 120,000 words, but those are for novels, right? When you
Yep.
talk about business, is it 20, 30, 40, 50,000 words? I mean, because really you just want to get something out there that's succinct and precise that people can consume and enjoy. And you
Yep.
don't have to make it this huge belabored project. But my question is how many words should my book be? I'm already 35,000 words and I'm on track for 100.
Okay. So you're definitely on track for a novel or volume one and volume two.
Right?
And here's why I say that. So typically in the nonfiction space, which is, I'm assuming what that book is living in, um, it's anywhere from like 30 to 45,000 words. And here's why. That gets you about 150 pages and it gets you a spine on the book. Because what happens is sometimes you get books,
It looks like a
um,
pamphlet.
there's no spine, or there is a spine, but you can't read the words. And so, you want to have a book that has a spine, right? For lack of a better way, we don't want to be spineless, and we want to show that we have some we have some content
Write
available that people
50,000
want to read.
words. Don't be spineless. No,
Yeah,
I like
exactly.
it. I like
Um,
it.
and I think I think if you get a nonfiction book that's focused on a specific idea or topic in that 150 to 180 pages, that's the sweet spot. Um, that's what a lot of publishing companies are telling me. Um, that's what my editor told me. Like, this is where you need to aim for, because you want to have a spine and you want it to look good. And you want it, like, when people pick up your book, they want to be like, oh, this is a book. They don't want to be like, oh, I don't want to carry this because it's too heavy for my backpack. Or like, is this a pamphlet? Um, and some people are writing shorter books and they're actually calling them micro books, which is kind of an interesting title. So it's
Right?
like
That's new.
it's not a full book, but it's not that it's not impactful or that there's not great content, but maybe it's like the precursor to something coming.
Right.
Uh,
That's actually really good. I like that because sometimes people that get to the point, I want the knowledge, I got to move on. I don't get a lot of time. And then there are other times, and I think this is true with business, right? The micro books are better for business because there are other times when people are like, I just want to sit down and just distract myself and just enjoy the experience. And those are the longer ones where people are wordy and descriptive, right?
yeah.
And I was thinking that my book is too long, right? Like it's too much, right? Especially because it's dry, it's cybersecurity. And I'm pretty good at making it interesting and putting some funny anecdotes in there, right?
Right.
But it's dry. Who wants to know how many variants of malware there are and what a vector is and a vector of attack? I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And it just makes your eyes glaze over, right?
And I would imagine, and like, I think my goal when I wrote mine was to get it to about 40,000 words and then edited down. It was, I don't know, in like the 34 to 36 range. So like once you kind of edit down what your rough draft is and you kind of get through that editing process, it's going to come down a little bit. But if you're already at 35,000, like that might be two books you're writing. It might be a series of books that you're writing, like
Right.
Cybersecurity by Doug, right? Like this is like, here's the whole book and it's a 5 book series. Like
I'm
here's part.
already rewriting it in my head. I just changed the title in my brain just right now because of everything you just said. I'm literally going to title it. The title's going to be I Have Naked Pictures of You, right?
It's an attractive title.
Like
People are going to buy
right
it.
away. Because how many times have you gotten those emails? Oh, I have naked pictures of you if you don't send me money, right?
Right.
And I get a lot of calls from people about that. I get a lot from my clients constantly. Someone just sent me this email. It's just BS. And yeah, it's 99% BS. But on
Right.
the other hand, if you put naked pictures of yourself on your phone, Apple has those, Google has those, right? They're downloading that stuff all the time. The NSA has those. They just taking that stuff right from your phone. So yeah, you just made my day. I mean, I hope this podcast is as beneficial for everybody else, but you just changed the course of my writing direction. Um,
Awesome.
all right. So what else? So you have Monumental Media, and you do books and you help people with podcasts and you do narration. What else do you do?
What else do I do? Well, I still have my studio. So if you're watching this on video, you can kind of see part of my creative space here. And so I'm producing music for songwriters and artists literally across the world. because we can do that now in the digital age. We have the access to work with people internationally, which is uh, so fantastic. And then I still playing drums, still playing live gigs, and out there on the road, not as much or not as long as I used to be, but that's okay. It's kind of part of that building. Like I got to the point where I can play the gigs I want with the people I want when I want, and it works fantastic. And so it
You know, we
becomes
we
back
should
to a
talk
joy
about
for me.
we should talk about the Total Boss Mastermind we just did this past weekend, and you were a speaker, and what you did with the music was so powerful, right? Like people, if you're listening to this podcast and you have an opportunity to listen to Jeremy speak at one of these masterminds, and he does a lot all over the country, you got to go see him. I mean, do you want to get into a little bit of what you did and why it worked so well?
Sure, I can do that. Absolutely. This is my favorite thing to talk about. Um, and so my idea behind my talk at the Total Boss event was this idea: if you change your music, it can change your mind, which then can change your life. And so this idea that music actually physically takes over our brain, over 50% of the known mapped parts of the brain, and it's all consuming. And so being intentional about what we listen to, being intentional about when we listen to it, and having it be a part of our day, not just like this passive thing that's going on in the background, because it really can change. So one of the things that we did was like just walk through your normal parts of your day, and just kind of this idea of like my morning routine, and then I'm going to go to work, and then I'm going to come home from work, and I'm going to do dinner, and I might help the kids with homework, or might have to run some errands, and then I might actually take some time to relax in the evening, and then go to bed, and then go back all over again, kind of this rat race mentality, right? We're just on the gerbil wheel spinning. But what if you just added a little music to that, and you're walking through that day? How can that change just your brain, and how can it disrupt the monotony of what's going on? So when I do this in a live setting, you have people do this movement kind of piece where they're just kind of mundanely walking through their day. And then I put on a music track, and instantly it was awesome to see from my perspective, because I get to see everybody. They only get to see maybe who's in front or around them, but the whole place lights up like a Christmas tree. Everybody's smiling, everybody's moving, their body's moving different, and it's immediate. It's not like this even 30-second ramp up. It's literally immediate. Our body is just overtaken by it in a good way. So if you can take that idea and just implement it into certain parts of your day and think about that, then you can change the course of your brain, literally, physically. And then that can actually change your day. It can change your life. I mean, you might start interacting with people you didn't even know about because you're moving differently.
Right? You're attracting different people. It's like a biohack. It's like
Yeah.
how do I improve everything I do? Well, add music to it. How do I lighten my mood? Change the music, listen to something new, right? And so it was really powerful for me. Like because I do a lot of these workshops, and it's the first time I've ever heard anyone talk about this at all. Like you could do your own personal tour on this stuff because it was so powerful, and it has a palpable effect immediately. Like you don't go, oh well, that sounds like a good idea. Maybe I'll try that and see if it works. You know right away, and it's like those are the types of things that people want. People don't want to waste their time. They want to know something that works and implement it and move on with their life. And it was so powerful. It was instantaneous. And you're right, like everyone's energy in the room shifted. And I was so impressed with it. I really was. It's one of the reasons why I asked you to do the podcast. Like
Well, thank you.
I wanted to talk about it. Like he does all this other stuff, but I want to get into this biohacking thing he figured out, that he's talking about.
Well, and the interesting part about that is, and I even made this mention when at the event, was I had an epiphany that morning, that Saturday morning, about exactly what I was talking about. And I'm like, so many of us, you get to a certain age and you're like, hey, I want to go back to high school, because and at least for me, high school was easy. It was carefree. Like you didn't have responsibilities or bills or mortgages or jobs or none of that kind of stuff. And I said, you actually can go back there, because our brains are so wired to that time period, and the music that we listen to, our bodies actually will go back to that experience if we play that music. And since
Right.
that day, I've had a half dozen people send me, "Hey, this is what I was listening to in high school. Hey, remember this song?" And I've listened to all of them, and I remember all of them. And that was the song that brought them back to high school. Like immediately, you actually are technically back there in a brain and body experience.
That's a super huge thing. And when you said that in the mastermind, what I remembered something I'd heard. And I wish I could remember where I heard this, but it is so true. Our brains don't distinguish between reality and fiction. It doesn't know. Our consciousness does, but our brain doesn't. So it's like if you're constantly thinking about an argument over and over and over again, you're burning that in. You're burning that emotion in because your brain doesn't know the difference. It thinks that you're still having the argument, right?
Yes.
So the same is true about your memories. If you're remembering something that's really good, if you like, I would much rather remember the good times than the bad times, right? It'd be
Right.
happier, less stressful, and if music is a gateway to get there, why not use it?
Yeah. And it's the simplest form to get there. We also know
Right.
about the brain that smells will get you back there.
Right. Yeah.
And
Smells.
that's actually the most powerful. And then auditory is the next one. So music or sounds or, those kinds of things. Our brain immediately will go back there. It's incredible. Um, and yeah, and I didn't even have enough time in the mastermind to talk about all of the things that I've done in my own life to kind of hack my own life
Right.
to actually use. Because we were in a small intimate group, and you're only given so much time. So like, how do I make the most amount of impact? And it sounds like for you, it worked really well. And I had
Yeah.
people come up to me saying, "You had me bawling." Yet I also had moments where everybody in that room was smiling and there was joy on their faces because I got to
Right.
see it, which was great. Um, and so like, you're right. And actually I left that mastermind, Doug, and was like, how do I take this on tour? How do I do this 99 times a year?
Right. Get paid big bucks for it. Yeah.
That'd be even more fun.
I think we have like we're these beings inside our bodies, right? Our bodies are more like a device, and sometimes it feels, for me anyway, it's like I've got this computer and it can do all these things, but I don't know all the things it can do. And I feel the same way about my body and these little biohacks and these tricks, right? Because there are so many things that we could do that make our life better. We live longer, we're healthier, we're happier, and we don't get a manual. Right? Someone needs to compile
Right.
all this. You need to be a chapter in this long book of eat this, do yoga, work out, you listen to
Right.
music. We just need a pamphlet on the human body, how to run it, um, something like that, or a book or a novel.
I think
There
you
you
might have
go.
just given me an idea for a new book. So
Good,
thank you.
good. If that's what happens, I'm psyched. Just give me credit in there. I
You
thought it
you
conceived in Thundercast.
you absolutely will be.
You're the man. You're absolutely the man. I got to tell you, I meet so many people at these masterminds, and on so many people, and it's understandable because I get this way. So many people are stressed and self-involved and distracted, and you never get to meet the authentic person. And so I collect. I like to say I collect authentic people, right? So when I
Oh, that's
when I
great.
first started talking to you, I'm like, I definitely got to befriend this guy. You're just cool people, If you just surround yourself with authentic people that are just like low key and just good givers, and they're not takers, life is just so much easier.
Oh
And
yeah.
I am thrilled to call you a friend and to have met you and to have had you here. um, is there anything else? Let's bring this to a close. Is there anything else that you wanted to say that I didn't ask about?
I mean, we covered a lot of ground today, and you inspired me also on this podcast. So I also love that. I don't want to just bring value. I love that I also get to receive some as well.
You just
And
changed a book I'm 35,000 words into, and I'm like, I'm going to scrap it. I'm going to write this thing. I'm going to cut it down to 30,000 words, and I got a title out of it.
perfect. And here's the part that I most want to encourage you. Just finish it and put it out.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm actually a finisher. I've actually published works before. So yeah, I will do it.
Good.
It sometimes takes me a little while to get there, but I get there. So
That's what I
yeah.
like to hear the most.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're going to include, if you're listening, we're going to include all of Jeremy's information in the links below, or whatever platform you're watching this on. We'll get his email, his website, and other contact information. So if you have any questions for Jeremy Schreifel, reach out to him. Obviously, he is full of information. And if you have a book, you have a podcast you want to get started, let him know. He's helped me, and I'm sure he'll help you as well.
Thank you so
Jeremy,
much.
thank you. Thank you for being here.
You bet.